It's the Blues Rock Show with Pete Francis and Willie Witten.
Welcome to the Blues Rock Show. Pete Francis alongside Willie Witten. Make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode of the Blues Rock Show. All right, Willie, we're going to kick things off this week talking about the Allman Family Revival. And if you haven't heard about the Allman Family Revival, this has actually been something that's been going on for a couple years now. But this year, they're really blowing it up. And the Allman Family Revival is a tribute to Greg Allman, and it was started by his son, Devin Allman, who is obviously with the Allman Betts Band. So the Allman Betts Band pretty much anchors the Allman Family Revival, but this year they've extended to 19 dates, and they're bringing on a lot of talent with them. It's pretty much an all-star lineup. Willie, before we talked about how we have Crossroads, Eric Clapton does Crossroads every 3 years, but it's more of the old guard at Crossroads. This is kind of a Crossroads for modern day artists, which is really cool. And Willie, you had a chance to go see the Allman Family Revival in Austin. It was one of their first shows on the tour. What was that like, getting to see all this talent in one place?
It was great. It was a lot to take in. Like you said, the cast list is extensive. And even more importantly, you also mentioned it's very modern. These are people who are very much in the prime of what they're doing now. Sure, there's a couple people who are a little bit older, but most of these are people who are currently working as touring musicians, recording musicians. It was great. The atmosphere was fun. When, they use the term revival, I think it's fitting. As you said, it's a tribute to, Greg Allman, but I think it's sort of a tribute to the Allman Brothers in general as well. The type of music that they played, the way they played their music, the way that they, the Allman Brothers Band, it is sort of a family. One of the things I felt that was very apparent was there was a very familial atmosphere in the crowd amongst the concert goers and amongst the people on stage. I think it's cool when you get to see that nice little middle ground between being that sort of documentarian tribute type deal and mixing in the fact that this is very far from that. The people who are on stage, the Allman Betts Band, they are a great band in their own right. They opened up a show. We opened up this show with a couple modern songs, one by the Allman Betts Band, Magnolia Road. They did a Dickinson Brothers song, the North Mississippi All-Stars. They did Up and Rolling. I thought that's a great way to start. Because, of course, a lot of the concert was then later Allman Brothers songs, less because of they wanted to hammer home the point, but you realize that when they started to bring more guests on stage, that when you combine people that haven't played together routinely, you need to sort of find common ground. And it just so happens that some of the blues staples that everybody knows, One Way Out, Midnight Rider, Songs of That Manner, Sweet Melissa. These are songs that people grew up on. So it's a true convenience that everyone knows it. So in a way, it felt really natural. I'm glad they expanded this. And I hope that, this becomes an Allman family tradition, because it would be great for people to be able to look forward to every year. The Allman Betts Band, who also includes Dwayne Barry Oakley, who is also a descendant of the Allman tree, to have people come back and listen to the music they love and some new stuff and some new people. Allie Venable is pretty young. Certainly all that music predates her, but she knows it just as well. So it's a chance for the people who are the old guard to get to play with the modern stars and then also bring some youth. And I'm talking the performers and the audience. It was a great time, Pete. I wish you could have been there. You would have loved it.
Yeah, and let's talk about some of the talent that joined the Allman Betts Band, Willie. We had Eric Gales, and obviously Eric Gales right now, his career is really on the way up, known as one of the best guitar players on the planet. Robert Randolph, one of the best slide guitarists on the planet. Kenny Wayne Shepherd, another one of the best guitar players. Samantha Fish, who's just been blowing up in recent years. So you had a lot of talent there. Joanne Shaw Taylor, a lot of artists. And that's really neat, because we had mentioned this before, that Eric Clapton has Crossroads, which they do every 3 years, but Crossroads is more of the super, super established legacy artists. but not a whole lot of the artists who are really kind of day in, day out are the ones who are putting out a lot of music today and being very active today. So it is super cool that the Allman Family Revival is doing this and they're bringing all these artists together. And then ultimately the fans are the big winners here, Willie.
Yeah. And I just think it would be great to see them not only keep this going, but maybe expand upon it. Just in a way, I got vibes that felt like, you know what, this could be like a one-day crossroads that you mentioned. I think also maybe they want to expand upon it because I think they'd have people that would use it as a bigger event. I think people would bring their own families, their own friends. It's a great format that I hope they continue to expound upon. There was nothing but good stuff there, Pete. So wonderful.
So yeah, great modern day music.
Yeah.
Now, Willie, Billboard recently released its end of the year top 20 or top 200 chart.
Yep.
So the top 200 selling albums over the course of the year. And actually some of the streaming comes into play when they put together this chart as well. So the top 200 albums from 2021, and not one of them is a modern day rock album.
No.
And no blues on there at all. Does that surprise you at all? And what's your reaction to that, Willie?
The number of a flat zero. Yeah. Flat zero surprises me. Also, if there were 12, that would have surprised me as well. But certainly the flat zero surprises me. Yeah, you have some legacy acts, albums that are always going to be up there.
Like I saw AC/DC Back in Black was on there.
Queen, I think I saw Fleetwood Mac Rumors. That seems to be always on there. You have your ones that are there every year. Zero surprises me, but I think the other thing that really caught my eye after I read about it is something you had mentioned about the streaming, Pete. It's not a perfect science. And now I'm not trying to make excuses for why there's no rock or blues on there. It's not what I'm trying to do. But I wonder what that rubric is. I wonder how they calculate how many streams convert to a purchase. And the reason why I say that, Pete, is because I think that streaming has in many ways, maybe not skipped, but the people who love the rock and blues are less likely to stream. Do you think that that's me making a broad generalization, or Pete, do you sort of see what I'm getting at? Maybe.
I would tend to agree with you there because this audience is one of the few audiences that actually still goes out and buys physical albums.
Yeah.
You know, there are people who listen to blues rock who are still buying physical albums, physical CDs right now.
Sure.
The younger generation is not doing that. We've mentioned before on the show that vinyl sales have now surpassed CD sales. So some younger people are buying vinyl, but they're not buying CDs. But pretty much most young people now, they're all streaming, right, Willie? So that doesn't surprise me a whole lot.
I wonder how much there is to take from this, that it's a problem, or is that with the internet and with streaming, has rock and blues sort of siphoned itself off in a way from the mainstream? And if they have, Pete, if they've siphoned themselves off from the mainstream, do you think that's to their detriment? Or maybe the better...
Well, Willie, I don't think rock and blues have siphoned themselves away from the mainstream. I think it's the other way around. I think the mainstream has moved themselves away from rock and blues. It's not that there aren't people that don't like rock and blues. It's just that mainstream doesn't push it at all. So how is it going to get the exposure, or how are people going to, how are these albums going to be high on the charts if no one ever hears them? And because there's not being a lot of money put behind these albums. Right. There just isn't.
And that makes sense too, from a business perspective. People who are in these companies aren't going to sit there and throw tons of money behind something that they don't think is going to sell.
Yeah, outside of a Greta Van Fleet right now,
right, there's
not being a lot of money thrown at this type of music. It's just kind of the way it is. And it's unfortunate, but it is the way it is.
It is. I think part of that too is due to the fact, and I don't want to get too far down this path, we've done this before, streaming. I don't think the transition to streaming and modern technology adaptation in terms of music has really smoothed out yet. And I think there's still some wrinkles there. The last question I'll ask you about this, Pete, is do you think, if anything, And if there is something, what does this portend for the future of rock and blues? And I'm not talking about for people like you and I, younger people, or the older generation. What does this portend for the future of these categories going down the line, or does it not matter?
Well, I don't think it's a good thing. It's definitely not a good thing, because how are these younger people supposed to know about this music?
Right.
You know, people who pay attention to websites like Blues Rock Review, they're very active and engaged music listeners. These are the type of people who are actively going to live shows. These are musicians themselves. They're guitar players. But how do you get this music out to just the average everyday fan that isn't so actively engaged? It's really difficult when this music is not played on the radio. It's tough, but things tend to go in cycles, Willie. So maybe 5-10 years down the line, maybe some of this music makes its way back up. I mean, you can only hope so,
right?
But who knows at this point?
That's true. But one thing we do, Billboard has their top 200, if you've ever heard of Billboard, but just as important is,
or more
importantly, is the Blues Rock Review top 20 albums of the year. And that is up for vote right now. Please, if you haven't voted, go ahead to the website, cast your vote. Every vote does matter. I'm not trying to be cliche, but you've been paying attention. You've been listening to music. Please make your vote. But as we're talking about that, Pete, you want to give us a little history lesson as it pertains to past winners and talking about cycles and what may be in store for this year's winner.
Yeah. And first off, let me just talk about the vote really quick first. So how the vote is done, go to bluesrockreview.com, and there is a drop-down list with all the artists nominated. If you see an album that's not nominated, there is a write-in option, and you can vote for that album there. So all you have to do, put in the album you want, put your email address, click submit, boom, your vote is in. And right now we've got over 6,000 votes in the first week, which is awesome. So that's definitely really great. And 50% of the vote counts from the fans. So if you vote, that counts for 50% of the vote, those votes that we get in from the fans. And the other 50% comes from the Blues Rock staff. So like people like me, Willie, and the rest of our staff, that counts for 50% of the vote. So that's how we do it. So let's do a little rundown of the history. So this is the 11th year that Blues Rock Review has done the top 20 albums list. And we're going to kind of take a trip down some of our past here. We started in 2011. The first number one was the Black Keys, El Camino. If you remember, that was a huge album, got a lot of attention. In 2012, Joe Bonamassa went number one with Driving Towards the Daylight, which is definitely one of Bonamassa's top albums that he's had over his career. In 2013, Buddy Guy, Rhythm and Blues. 2014, Dan Patlansky, Dear Silence Thieves, and that was kind of his breakout in the blues rock scene. And Dan has gone on to have some nice success, especially over in Europe and the UK since then. 2015, King, Reaching for the Light. 2016, Dan Patlansky, again, Intro Vertigo. And Dan Patlansky is one of only two artists to earn the number one spot on the year-end top 20 list. The only other artist to do it, Joe Bonamassa. 2017, Kenny Wayne Shepherd, Lay It On Down. 2018, Anthony Gomes, Peace, Love, and Loud Guitars. 2019, Rival Sons, Feral Roots. And 2020, Joe Bonamassa, Royalty, becoming the second artist to hit number one twice. Joe Bonamassa put out Time Clocks this year. I think he's got a chance at getting the hat trick and becoming the first artist, but we'll see, because there's a lot of votes that go into this. A lot of good albums, too, that have come out this year. There have been a lot of artists, I think, Willie, who kind of were waiting and hanging on to release music until this year because of the pandemic. I think a lot more music did come out this year. So it is a very competitive field this year, Willie.
Yeah, it is. And I'm going to be honest, I have still not cast my vote because it's taken me a little bit of time because of what you said. There's a few more albums. It's a tight field, I think. It is every year. That's a silly thing to say. It is every year. It's always a difficult decision. I've got my top pick, and I won't say what it's narrowed down to, but I've narrowed it down to three. I think I have my number one coming from a group of three, and I think I've got my top three coming from a group of five. So I'm homing in on what I'm looking for. Pete, have you made your picks yet? Are you going to share?
I haven't yet. So I still have to put together my ballot, and it's going to be tough, Willie. It's tough every year. And there's a lot that goes into this list and a lot of time that goes into this list and the voting. So it's going to be interesting to see how it all shakes out. And you can see the top 20 list December 15th. It'll come out on bluesrockreview.com. So stay tuned for that. What's your number one album of 2021? Let us know down in the comments section below. Are you planning on checking out the Allman Family Revival? Let us know. And what are your thoughts on No Rock or Blues in the Billboard Top 200 chart? Let us know down in the comments below. We always love to hear from you guys. And if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a video. And please hit that like button. It helps tremendously with YouTube's algorithm, and we really appreciate your support. That's going to wrap up this week's edition of the Blues Rock Show. For Willie Witten, I'm Pete Francis. We'll see you next time.